I think what I'd like to do is go ahead and start the meeting since we have staff and guests here. And because we're a 10-member commission and only 4 of us are present, we don't have a quorum. So we can't take any action items, but we can hear information items from our guests and their staff and take oral communications. Kathy, is that?
Mm-hmm, sure.
Okay. And then if we do get other commissioners joining us, we can have the minutes reflect that, and if any action is needed thereafter, we can do that. So we'll begin the meeting with a roll call.
Commissioners Lundholm.
Yes.
Abbey. Carney. Fonick. Chair Brown.
Here.
Geisweiler.
Here.
Salas. Henning.
Here.
Vice Chair Chambers. And Washburn.
Thank you. Corrections to the agenda. I'm going to suggest that we move approval of the minutes toward the end of the meeting in case we have enough commissioners to actually move the minutes forward. Otherwise, those will be kicked to the next agenda. So then next is oral communications. Any members of the public like to address us on items that are not on the agenda?
Maybe I'll use this opportunity to introduce you to new staff people that are joining the science department, which we're very excited about. Daisy Allen joined us first at the end of April, right?
Towards the beginning of April.
Beginning of April. So anyway, she is a planner 4. She's working the sustainability special projects section, so she's helping out with some of the near-term regulatory actions focused on affordable housing, working with housing staff, and she's going to be showing you the ADU presentation a little bit later, and we're, so pleased that she's here. We got great additions to our staff, and we're so excited. Stephanie Hansen here joined us on June 25th, so she's only been here a very short time. She is the Sustainability and Special Projects Principal Planner, so she is managing that section. I don't know if you recall, Paya was the manager of that section, and then she got a promotion to Assistant Planning Director. And so we're thrilled to have Stephanie. She's been a director in the past. She's worked in consulting firms. So she's going to be instrumental in pulling our new team together to finally be able to focus on the sustainability general plan update and the code modernization work. And then Suzanne Issei has lived in the county for a long time and worked actually for the county of Santa Cruz in housing 3 years ago. I worked with Suzanne at the city of Capitola years ago. She's worked for the city of Watsonville, and so we're extremely pleased to have her expertise. She's a principal planner working in the housing section, so that is a new management position that we were able to add to housing, and I think that reflects the importance of housing and addressing housing and the county's strategic plan. It was a top issue. Fred's here to talk about housing and what can be done locally. And so now we've got a great staff expert, deep expertise in housing, community grant programs. She's coming to us from the city of Sunnyvale the past 9 years, and she's been in the upper management in their planning department in Sunnyvale. So I don't know if any of you want to say a few words or whether anything to add, but anyway, so it's very exciting, as you can tell.
Welcome.
Delighted to have you all. Commissioner Washburn.
Perfect time.
Good. So Commissioner Abbey, welcome. Thank you for being here. And Carlos, you'll be kind enough to reflect we now have a quorum. Before we go on back to the minutes, any commissioners have questions for our new staff members or anything to say about that? Other than we're all delighted to have them? Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to go back to, or was there any other oral communications?
Yeah, since Nancy's here now, I get to embarrass her.
There you have it.
I believe this is Nancy's last meeting with us on the hack.
Yeah, I thought last time was my last meeting. So.
Until I crowd you to come today.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're here today, Nancy. And I've not had a lot of time to get to know Nancy just over the last X number of months, but as you all know in this room, she's just been a stalwart of progressive politics in this town. and she's moving away later this month, and we're going to miss her in this community. So I'm very appreciative to get to know you, and I appreciate all your efforts in this community, because you've done just some amazing work in this community, moving our county forward and our town forward. So thank you for that work.
Thank you.
And we're going to miss you.
Well, we go back a long way.
Yeah, Nancy and I managed to get more or less on the opposite side of something when we met, and I've liked and respected her from the very first day.
Yes, thanks Nancy for all your work on the commission. I'll just say also that Nancy was along with Linda and I worked on the ad hoc committee for close to 6 months that brought some recommendations to this commission, which were then agreed upon unanimously to send to the Board of Supervisors, which resulted in some staff recommendations to the board, which were unanimously passed most recently to do some pretty amazing short-term things with housing. So Nancy played a critical role in interviewing stakeholders for that process, and so I just deeply appreciate your work, Nancy, over the past year and a half on the commission.
I think that's all.
Yeah, you've done a lot in a short period of time, so thank you for being there. So then I will go back to the consent agenda, now that we have a quorum, and ask for approval of the minutes of our May 2nd meeting.
Move approval of one change, the adjournment should be by Chair Brown, not Vice Chair.
Pardon?
The adjournment on the minutes should be by Chair Brown.
Oh. Thank you for catching that. Yeah. Okay. So I have a motion to approve the minutes with that change. Anyone care to second that?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain?
Who seconded the motions?
Motion. Yes. Thank you. All right. Well, I think that we're on to our housing bond update. We have the illustrious Mr. Fred Keeley here to give us an update on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, Planning Director, your expanded and wonderful new staff. Good, congratulations on that. Can't have too many people working on this topic, it seems to me. Thank you for inviting us back again. I don't mean me as us, the large group of folks who've been working on this. You have a bit of a packet in front of you with a cover note that says affordable housing in Santa Cruz County. That's a name under which a number of people have been working for about 19 months now to see if our community could take a serious look at bonded indebtedness through issuance of bonds, and be able to apply the proceeds of those bonds in strategic ways to deal with both the supply and affordability of housing across a number of dimensions. And we were in front of you, this group was in front of you a few months ago and gave you an idea about where we were then. So this is a bit of an update on that. Since we were with you last, we used that as the point of departure. Last time we were here, we said that we were looking at a bond probably somewhere in the amount of $250 million. That is now about $140 million. The reason that that has gone down substantially is three reasons. One, in order to get the tax rate statement so that we were under $20 per 100,000 of assessed valuation, we reduced the amount of that. We have, from lots of input, reason to believe that that is probably the outer limit, $19 per 100,000 of assessed, not market value, but assessed valuation. That's probably where the price elasticity stretches out in terms of residents and voters' appetite for a bond measure. So that. Additionally, the County of Santa Cruz, taking the lead through the CAO's office, Planning Department, has been working with the 4 cities in our community and talking to them about their projects that they might be able to benefit from a bond measure, but they need to be not exactly shovel-ready, a phrase we used to hear a lot about projects, shovel-ready, but they need to be more than just, gee, someday possibly a thought. It needs to be more than that. And so when working with the cities and the county, that also became about the realistic number that if the voters were to pass a bond, something could happen in each of the cities and the county during let's say the first decade and a half of the issuance of that bond. The third issue for getting the size down is related to the first, and that is that we held 5 community meetings since we saw you. And those community meetings were 1 in each supervisorial district so that we could cover all of the county and the cities. They were attended in an uneven way, shall I say. There were a few people, a couple of them, maybe 30, and then there were 40, 45 at a couple of others. So they were reasonable size, held the evenings during the work week, after work. So we tried to work it out so people could get there, but you know how it is. It's you're reaching out, you're doing the best you can. I wouldn't say it was an overwhelming response, but it was a response. And at those, people were given the current thinking of what a bond might look like. There would be some first-time home buyer, if you met some requirements of affordability and there, with a local preference. There would be affordable rental housing, also with a local preference to it. There would be what we were calling an opportunity fund at that point, which was how you might be able to get some projects that might come along that didn't fit neatly into one of these other categories. And then lastly, those brick and mortar or capital outlay projects that would be associated with the many issues around homelessness, whether that is homelessness in and of itself, or homelessness that has to do with mental health or drug or alcohol addiction, and how, when talking to judges and folks in the criminal justice system, on all sides of that, and social service folks, that ability to interrupt that cycle of the criminal justice system by being able to have a useful place where people's lives might have an opportunity to be, for them to be safer and repaired, if you will, in some way. I'm not a mental health expert, so if I've used a word that isn't appropriate, I apologize for that. But that was the general idea of the bond at the time. People were reacting to that. Based on that, and then some very intense meetings with a couple of members of the Board of Supervisors who have been our guides along the way, and with the CAO's office and the Planning Department and some others, getting the details of such a bond measure correct, meaning that there are a number of documents that the Board of Supervisors would need to have in front of them in order to place such a measure on the ballot. Tax rate statements, certain resolutions, a whole number of things. So we've been working very closely with them. Where we are today, you can see on the lower right-hand, there's a page 5, lower right. This is about halfway through the document. This is about where we are. As you can see, this is based on $150 million, so you can take that number down by 10 because we have been making some amendments. But this is what the bond would look like categorically now. 3 buckets rather than 4. Although we've spread that 4th idea about an opportunity fund among the 3 buckets by broadening a little bit each of those categories. But about 90 million or 60% of this would be what we call workforce housing, production, preservation, and conversion. 20% on this first-time home buyer, and then 20% on homelessness. Again, these were arrived at through 18, 19 months worth of discussions, public meetings, gatherings that 63 people who were on the left-hand margin of that cover letter. We've been meeting at the Community Foundation once a month. They've been very kind to allow us to use their facility and to fund an administrative position for us, somebody to herd us around a bit. Where we are at now in terms of timing is that the Board of Supervisors will come back into session in the first week of August, and at their meeting on the 7th of August, it appears that from talking to the CAO, County Council, and the County Clerk, that would be the appropriate board meeting for them, if they wish to place the measure on the ballot for November. Now, whether they do that or not will be determined by a number of considerations, one of which is, quite frankly, there's no real sense, even as hard as everybody's worked on this, there is no real sense going forward if there isn't some reasonable expectation that this is what the voters want and they support it. The threshold is high. It's, of course, a 2/3 vote requirement. There is a change in state law a year ago that went to the question of, on the ballot, the title and summary that the voter will read, and not all of the subsequent information in the voter pamphlet, but when you're looking at this measure on the ballot, what will it say? And there's a word limitation on that. The legislature a couple of years ago put a requirement in that some number of those 75 words needed to be dedicated to how much is the bond, how much when it's repaid has been paid total, what is the price per 100,000 of assessed valuation. That information already appears in the ballot. This changes where it appears and puts it absolutely first thing. The intent of the legislature was to get to one issue, and they swept in all issues that were bonds. And so beginning in January of this year, there still is an ongoing attempt to see if the effective date of that could be the 2020 election rather than the 2018 election, because people all over the state were operating under the assumption that the status quo ante, if you will, the position of those 75 words, or the conditions for the requirements of those 75 words, were going to be what they were in the 2016 election and previously. So it makes a difference. In order to test whether or not that change, which, without getting too deeply into the weeds, the legislature and the governor have worked on this. There was a thought that it would become a trailer bill to the budget bill, and at the last moment it got decoupled. Budget went forward, this bill stayed in the Senate. The legislature would have Monday the 6th, when they come back, the first day back from their summer vacation, to pass this through both houses, give it to the governor, have him sign it, in order for us to be in the position. In other words, I think it's very unlikely. I've had that experience, that it has happened before. I think it's unlikely that this is of enough value to the governor and the legislature that they would start waiving rules and all kinds of things in order to make that happen in 24 hours. So I think we're going to be sitting with the situation per current law. We are in the field with a poll. Went in last night, tonight, tomorrow. Good sample size. We were asked to oversample. Usually you sample around 400 to get into a 95% confidence level and a plus or minus 3% margin of error. Because we think this we want a really quite refined look at what the voter sentiment is. We up that number from 400 to 600 sample size to get a higher degree of confidence and a lower margin of error. Also, so that we could go down, drill a little deeper in, say, the 4 cities. If you do 400 sample size, the sample in Capitola isn't going to be very reliable, right? It's going to just be so small. But if you go up to a 600 sample size, now what you're looking at in Scotts Valley or Capitola, as opposed to Santa Cruz, Watsonville, and the county, those are going to become more reliable, not 100%, but more reliable. We'll have those results probably about, a top line result probably about the 18th of this month. That'll then give us a couple of weeks to work with the 2 members of the board that with whom we've been working, and the CAO's office, as well as the 4 cities and ourselves, if you will, to see, is this the right, do we have a path to victory? Do the voters want this? Is this a part of the solution that they're willing to both support with their vote and then subsequently with their tax dollars? So that is an update as to where we are. $140 million bond measure covering the 4 cities and the county, going to the issues of home ownership, affordable rental housing, homeless, brick and mortar activities, and then some opportunities that we might not be able to see today that could come up during the course of it. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for allowing me to be here representing the us that I keep referring to, and I'm glad to answer questions if I could.
Yeah, thank you for making time to come back to us today. With that, Commissioners, anyone have any questions of Mr. Keeley?
Thank you.
The board meeting date again is?
Would be August 7th. The first full board meeting, or first board meeting when they come back from their summer recess.
Yes, go ahead.
One question, if I could, Fred. So assuming the 140 million gets on the ballot, assuming that's approved by the 2/3 vote of electorate, this is now a countywide bond. We have 4 cities and the unincorporated area. How then does that 140 million spread among those 5 jurisdictions?
So the current state of discussion, and I think it's fairly settled that this is what it will be. Lots of discussions with the city managers and the mayors. Those are, oftentimes they will have somewhat different points of view because they have different responsibilities, but city managers and mayors and the CAO and others. There were several different formulas put out there and run through. The one where we could get common agreement was that per capita seems to make sense. Because that's how in a certain way, how the bonds are being repaid in a certain sense. I mean, it's not precisely, it doesn't match up precisely, but there's reason to do it that way. The other, so mostly it will be per capita. Some of the homeless, for example, will be done by the board because it's, in essence, a county criminal justice, social service, mental health kind of issue, and they have the departments and resources in charge under law to be dealing with that. So more of that will be in collaboration, let's say, with the city of Santa Cruz and others, but the county will be the center of that activity. I hope that's answers your question.
Thank you.
I might add, so the CAO, Carlos Palacios, he did put together a task force of staff, and so I've been on that, and we've been asked to develop some recommendations for consideration on some of those points. So we've been playing around with some alternate formulas, and I don't think we've landed quite yet on what our recommendation would be, and I'm not sure what will happen with our recommendations once we make them, but we've been talking with the city managers and planning and housing staff from the 4 cities as well as us. So,
Thank you.
Any other commissioners, questions? Any members of the public wish to ask any questions? Yes, Becky.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Keeley, for the presentation. Becky Steinbruner, resident of Aptos. I have 3 questions. Who are the 2 supporting board of supervisors on the board that you've been working with? Who would administer these monies? It sounds like your effort has been sort of hubbed at the Community Foundation. Is that the organization that would manage these monies, or would it be a county or city-based administration? And who would provide oversight? Would there be a citizen-based oversight, or who would provide oversight? Those are my 3 questions.
Okay, let me see if I can take them in the order I can remember them. First, with regard to with whom have we been meeting, I want to be very clear about this at this point, because there's a Brown Act issue implication here. Many of us, myself included, have spoken to many supervisors. In fact, every supervisor. I've spoken personally to every supervisor, as many people do on issues. But with whom are we meeting, so to speak? That would be Supervisor Friend and Supervisor Leopold. Neither of whom have we asked to commit themselves to this, and neither of whom have committed themselves to it. They are the folks who are willing to invest time helping us think things through with the county. So we haven't asked for, we've received no commitments from any supervisor on this because for that reason. But those are the 2 with whom we've been meeting regularly. Secondly, the county versus, if you will, the Community Foundation. I'm very clear about the Community Foundation role because I'm a member of the board of directors of the Community Foundation, so I want to make sure we're real clear what their role is. They are a convener. They're sort of the living room for the community in certain ways. So they've been nice enough to say you can use our meeting room. They've allocated, I think it was $8,000 to allow us to hire a woman named Julianne Waite, who has been our keeping the minutes and sending out emails and doing that kind of administrative work, the meetings, sending out notices on the meetings and that kind of thing. Additionally, the Community Foundation made a $7,500 contribution, if you will, to the expenses for conducting the 5 community meetings. So they've been a resource to be able to go through this gathering of information and outreaching to the community and a venue in which we can meet. The moment, assuming fact not in evidence, but let's assume that the board places this on the ballot on August the 7th. The moment they do that, the Community Foundation ceases to be involved or to expend any funds, because then it's a campaign. From 19 months ago until then, it's perfectly fine because they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is just a convener activity, allowing people to know their place and so on and so on. But if and when the Board of Supervisors places it on the ballot, then the Community Foundation is completely finished. And so they have no ongoing role regarding either a campaign for this or any role in implementation should the voters pass it. Becky, number 3.
Oversight.
Oversight, okay, thank you.
Who will manage the funds?
Oh, County of Santa Cruz.
Okay.
The County of Santa Cruz will issue the bond, and so they administer the funds pursuant to the language that's in the resolutions and so on.
And who would provide oversight then?
Yeah, let me go there.
Thank you.
look at right-hand page, lower right-hand, page number 2, oversight criteria and approach. Number 1 on that, this independent citizens oversight committee shall be appointed. There's the description of what they would be doing. Those appointments would be made by the board.
I think we need to get back to that.
It's number 9, bottom.
I'm sorry.
Accountability measures?
No, page 2. I'm sorry, page 2.
We didn't do,
One
I
of
saw the
three.
word citizen oversight committee.
Yeah, the printers get page 2.
Well,
Let me apologize for that, and let me read it to you. And I have the original document from which copies were made, and I will leave this with the commission, and then if staff would be kind enough to make copies. But it says, oversight criteria and approach, an independent citizens oversight committee shall be appointed by the board. The COC will review semi-annual reports and ensure the funding is allocated as approved by voters to ensure geographic equity. The COC will include an equal number of representatives from each supervisorial district. Mr. Chairman, I'll leave that in your good hands.
And what is COC?
Community oversight.
Citizen oversight. Okay, thank you.
Citizen oversight.
Okay, thank you. And the county would appoint that?
Make those appointments,
Okay.
yes.
And those would be based on applications requested from the public for interested members of the public, or how would that be chosen?
I think you now know everything I know.
Okay.
The board, I'm sure, will add detail to that question.
That's going to be an important question.
Shall we say, yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
for all your
members.
work on this issue.
Nice to see you.
And can I just say, just a personal thank you. I know several people on this committee, and I know you've been working very, very hard. And I just really appreciate the time and the effort that you put into it and the others.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Shaka Brock.
Is there a way to contact you, Fred, by the way?
Oh, yeah, these people have all that information.
Thank you. All right. So now we'll move on to item number 6, near-term amendments to the county code to support creation of affordable housing. We have an item in our packet on that topic, but Kathy, are you?
We just wanted to report back to you that the board did confirm that this is the set of near-term regulatory actions that we should take up and work on. And so we've got a variety of staff that are doing just that. And the enhanced density bonus program, amending code with respect to farmer or agricultural employee housing, taking a hard look at fee structures for housing to charge, some other way by square foot or make some other adjustments to get fees down as low as possible. Modifying the mixed-use regulations, not in general for all mixed-use projects, but for those that include that are affordable housing mixed-use projects, to make some sort of revisions to make those types of projects more feasible to be built. And then the process to allow for a property owner or an applicant to more, at the front end, to propose the R combining district, so that those were the 20 units per acre sites that the board back in 2007, 2008, 2009 designated or rezoned to the R combining district in order to be able to get a certified housing element. And so a lot of those sites, a number of them have been developed with affordable housing now. We continue to get interest from some property owners and applicants who would like to be able to build at that density at certain opportunity sites. But right now the ordinance says that it's just the planning commission or the board who initiates that. So what we would like to, what we're considering, and the board said, okay, draft up the amendment so that we can take it through the public hearing process and decide, is that a property owner could basically request that the planning commission adopt a resolution of intention to rezone. So rather than the property owner just submitting a rezoning application, having to go all the way through the CEQA and project, the rezoning process and public hearings, and then at the end finding out whether the board, is amenable to that or not. Ask, for basically, is this a really bad idea, or is this something that is within the realm of that we should study, that it would be decent. So that would reduce their risk. And so that's the other one. And then we have what we're calling permanent room housing, and that's where we have on commercially zoned properties, usually they're old hotels, motels, some defunct nursing or convalescent homes that are no longer being used that way. And already, a lot of these are already being used for permanent residential housing, but they're not, they're illegal. They're not in compliance with the zoning. They don't have permits. And so the idea is to come up with an overlay district that basically would make it okay for them to be rented for long-term housing, even though they were on, they're on commercial property. But with this overlay zone, they would get a choice to be able to legally make it long-term housing. That way they could get building permits. We would give them building permits to make improvements, keep the property up, etc. So Daisy is doing a lot of work on that particular one. So if you have any specific questions, and we did give you the staff report that we sent to the board, we will be coming back to you as these items, ripen up for your recommendation. We'll be bringing them to you for your recommendation as well as to the Planning Commission for their recommendation, and then onto the board for considering action. And we're trying to at least get the first set to the board by fall, in the enhanced density bonus and the examination of fees and other things that that are a little more straightforward, secret review, etc. Some of the items might take a tad bit longer, but we were very focused on doing the work on those.
I have a question on the process. So given that we don't meet again until September, is it quite possible you might just move items to the Planning Commission before they would come to us? In order to get them before the board?
Yes, we may end up taking them to the Planning Commission for their recommendation, and then you'll be right after the Planning Commission for your recommendation.
I see.
And then both recommendations would go to the board.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners about any of these items specifically? Or the process and moving them forward to the board?
One question, Kathy. There was some public testimony when we had that evening meeting about some of the impact fees being paid later in the development process.
Yes.
It didn't make and we talked about everything, and I think you had some administrative issues about how to monitor that. And
well, that is, we didn't highlight that, but, and also the developer choice issue. So when the board last talked about it, when they did adopt the most recent amendments to the housing ordinance, they basically at that point said that when this comes back, yes, go ahead and make it county choice again. Don't make it developer choice, so that if there's a housing project of 7 or more units, they will be required to build the inclusionary units on site. The developer won't be able to say, no, I'd rather pay the fee. They can request the county, the Board of Supervisors, to let them pay the fee instead of building on site. But anyway, so that it's going to go back to county choice the way that it always had been. And then we're planning on forwarding language that made it pretty clear that you can pay your impact fees at final of the building rather than at issuance of the building permit. So we know that that's a feasibility enhancement as well for developers. Great.
Thank you.
Good.
I feel as though I should know this, but are many units included in all of this? Is there special thinking about them? The kind of...
Oh, small units? Tiny home type
yeah.
thing? Under the building code, you can, it depends on how you define tiny homes. If they're on wheels, if it's that type of portable on wheels tiny home, that's really a recreational vehicle. Currently, our code does not allow people to live, permanent residential in an RV. And we don't recommend that is a good idea. But if it's a housing unit that's on a foundation and it's a housing unit under the building code, you can build a house that's only 250 square feet if you wanted to. That could be a tiny home, and you can meet all the building requirements in that small of a unit. The issue is land, where to put these types of units, and a lot of times, so you can do it, but it can actually end up being an inefficient use of land to dedicate it to dispersed tiny homes. And so the multifamily apartment units, 20 units per acre, can tend to actually produce more housing lots of times.
Well, that 20 units per acre brings up the issue of square feet and smaller units. And is there any flexibility in that domain?
The enhanced density bonus, we're not sure, where we're going to end up with on our recommendation, but some folks have talked about maybe including a component there that rewards, smaller units within a building envelope, more smaller units within the building envelope, so that's a factor. But otherwise, the small units, the high density, that really has to wait for the code modernization. Under the Sustainable Santa Cruz County Plan, we got general support for what we call the Res Flex, a new zoning district called the Res Flex, and that would be a district that's designed to accommodate. Basically, it's a form-based code, so that a form-based code, so that you would get even higher than 20 units per acre, to be honest with you. So that's going to need to wait for the general plan update and the code modernization, because that's not just only about affordable housing; it's about housing supply in general. And so with this great team now, we're going to be able to really, and we've gotten a lot done this past year, between cannabis and ADUs and hosted rentals and on and on and on, so and now we've got the staff, and so we are going to get, after these near-term regulatory amendments, that is going to be the focus of the Sustainability and Special Projects team, is that
on this package that was approved by the board, do you have a sense of the timeline for them as a package, or do you see any of them?
Well, I think initially we thought they might be all one package, but then we realized that some of them are going to get done more quickly than others, and some are more straightforward. So and the board, well, when we got the initial direction from the board in reaction to the work of the HAC and MBEP report, etc., their priorities at that time were the enhanced density bonus and looking hard at the fee structure. And then, of course, coming back with the developer given choice, county choice, and the impact fees at occupancy rather than building permits. So those are in the first set. Whether we can get, one or two of these other ones in that set, we're not sure, but that will be we're trying to get to the board in September, I think, end of September.
There's some that require general plan amendments. Takes a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that update. If there are any other questions, I would open it up to the public to ask any questions. Sure, Becky.
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. First of all, I'd like to point out I did send an email to Mr. Landavery and to Julie Conway that this material was not available to the public on the website until, well, I checked it yesterday morning. It was not available. There were no active links on this commission's agenda that was published for the public that provided this information to the public. So under the Brown Act, I don't think that your board, your commission can take action today. I did see that the links had been added last night, but they were not there yesterday, so it must be available to the public 72 hours in advance of the meeting, as I understand the Brown Act. I'd also like to point out that this was all initially on the Board of Supervisors' June 12th consent agenda, which floored me that something this substantial could be put on a consent agenda for the board's consideration. I was very grateful that Supervisor Leopold pulled it off and had some discussion. He was very concerned about what basically is an end run around CEQA, an environmental review for the code modernization, and that's what much of this is, without the proper environmental review that was promised when all of that was presented to the board and the public in 2015. So I really, Supervisor Leopold asked at the June 12th meeting that there be a report regarding that risk issued to the board, not made public, and he was very careful about that when Supervisor Friend questioned him. But Supervisor Leopold could not get a second for that friendly amendment to pushing this forward. So I want to give you that background. This comes with a lot of risk because it is not following CEQA process. These are huge, huge changes in the zoning code that will have environmental impacts and need to be made, the impacts need to be studied and presented publicly. In terms of what I have read, and I want to thank you, Mr. Landaberry, for sending me a hard copy in advance. I have a question on the agricultural employee housing. How will that be defined? Who is an agricultural worker? Will this include the cannabis workers too? And when, in the next second paragraph, I have a question about what is the definition of near term? Why are these particular topics being sort of cherry-picked out of the code modernization and put forward under the definition of near term? I'd like some discussion about that. And when will the public see the environmental impact report for the code modernization? I also have a question about the combining district language that either the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission could concur with the initiation, and that would set the ball rolling forward. What I've seen that do is once developers start investing in things like that, they feel that and can make a good argument that they have financial entitlement, they have an investment, and that they must go forward. And oftentimes I feel that that takes precedent over community concerns about the impacts of those developments and the lack of infrastructure in place for those kinds of dense developments.
Okay, Becky, can you
okay, yes, thank you. So my last,
a few more minutes for this.
My last comment, I guess, is on page, well, it's 866 of the consent agenda item 56 that was elevated to 75.1 on the regular agenda. Quote, due to the high profile and high risk nature of these types of rezoning applications, it would greatly assist property owners applicants to be able to have either the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors either initiate or concur with initiation of a new or substitute or combining site. This would allow for some level of public awareness of possible application, and that bothers me. As a member of the public, I feel like it's minimally meeting CEQA requirements, but not fully meeting the county's transparent governance promise to the people. And I have a lot of concerns about this. Okay. But again, I want to say that I don't think you can take action today because this material was not available publicly on the Commission's website.
Thank you. It's an information item only, so we
okay. It sounded like they were going to ask for your concurrence.
This is just information that's coming back to us based on the board action that took place on June 12th. So we're just informing commissioners of what took place for those who couldn't be in attendance. Sir, you had a comment?
Yes, please, thank you. I just was up here working on getting a red tag expunged and working on getting the building permits. I'm lucky enough to own some land in the county, and I'd like to get building permits there. The hoops to jump through to get a building permit are just unbelievably difficult and long and arduous. I'm looking at many years, possibly to get 3-4 years to get a building permit up there, just because the process is so slow. So I know a lot of counties have emergency housing plans for tiny homes and these kind of things, and I know Kathy talked about the tiny homes and not feeling they were appropriate for the county, but I would like to know if it's possible to bring that up again, as it seems appropriate and so fast compared to getting a regular building permit. And it's ecological, and I think there's a lot of people that need homes. That's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for all of your work.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. All right, if there aren't any other commission comments or questions about that item, thank you for the update, Kathy. And we'll move on to the accessory dwelling unit loan program presentation.
Okay, so I'll first do kind of a general presentation of where we are with ADUs, and then present you with some new tools that are available on our website. And then Carlos will talk about the loan programs. Let me move over here so I can use the keyboard. I think I'll need the keyboard to put in an APN. That's okay. Yeah. To accept that. Okay. So I'm happy to talk with you all today about ADUs in Santa Cruz County. I, as Kathy mentioned, just started working here a couple months ago, so I will try my best to answer questions as we go along. I may refer to some of my colleagues along the way. If you've ever met Sarah Noisy in the past, the new Sarah, so taking over some of the things that she was working on. So ADUs, where are we now? Over the past few years, there's been a lot of regulations that have gone into effect both at the state level and at the county level. Prior to 2017, we already had an ADU ordinance here in the county. But as of January 1st, 2017, new state law kind of overrode what we had in the county. SB 1069 and AB 2299 went into effect in 2017. Those laws forbade local governments from disallowing ADUs and also required ministerial or building permit level approval of ADUs as long as the units met certain requirements. The bills also reduced ADU parking requirements, and then also AB 2406 was passed, which set some requirements on junior ADU ordinances. We don't have a JADU ordinance here in the county, so we just defer to the state on that one. So the Santa Cruz County Code then was subsequently amended in February of 2017 to meet state law. And then once we all started getting used to that, on January 1st of this year, there were more bills that came through. So SB 229 and AB 494 went into effect January 1st. And they had updates regarding ADU parking requirements, setbacks, and fees. But kept kind of the same bones of the laws that went into effect in 2017. And then the county code was again updated in March of this year to meet state law and further refine our code. And these rules are all in place. The purpose of all of these rules is to encourage ADUs and make it easier for folks to build accessory dwelling units as an important affordable housing strategy in the county. So I just pulled some numbers. So the graph on the right is kind of the number of ADU permits we've had over the past few years from 2010 to 2018. And you can see there hasn't been it's been kind of up and down, up and down. Prior to the recession, so like 2007, I think, we were averaging about 35 new ADU permits a year. And then since the recession, it's been a little bit lower than that, somewhere between 15 and 25 per year. Last year with the new code coming in, we did have over 25 new ADU permits. And then this year, so far, just in the first 6 months, we have over 20 permits. So we're starting to ramp up again. So what that shows me is that, we're not talking about a huge number of permits here, but we are going to start seeing a trend, I believe. However, it would be nice to see more. And one reason why I think the number of permits may be a little bit sluggish, there's so many new rules in place that I think a lot of times local property owners may not be aware of all the ADU allowances that we have now in place. Prior to 2017, it was a lot harder to get an ADU built than it is now. As long as you meet certain rules, you can just do it with a building permit. So just to show you the level of complication, I just put all the rules up here on the screen. But there's local ordinance requirements, there's special allowances for ADUs, there's an approval process, which has a slight wrinkle in the coastal zone here in the county. And then there's certain development standards that apply. And here in Santa Cruz County, we do have our own development standards for ADUs, depending on where you are located in the county and the size of the property, which can be a little bit confusing. So with the understanding that the purpose of the code is to make it easier to build ADUs, and it's a little bit complicated, we have created this accessory dwelling unit website that's kind of a portal for folks that are interested in getting started with this process, and can help them better understand what the rules are, what the process is, what the costs might be. And so we're hoping that this will make it easier. So let me actually pull up and take you through the website. And if you have questions as I'm going along, please feel free to ask questions. And again, I can mostly credit Sarah Noisy with the website. It was mostly done when I got here. We have 3 ADU guides that we've created: a design guide, a financing guide, and ADU basics. I'll take you through those in a minute. And those are hard copy guides that you can print out, or you can print them out from or you can just look at them on the website or print out specific tear sheets. There's resources. We have an FAQ page where a lot of people I think will go here to get started. We have a GIS tool, so you can enter an APN. Let's see. Put in an example, 06. So you can enter an APN here, and then you'll get an output that shows what your parcel size is, what your zoning is, whether you're in the coastal zone, if you're in the urban services line, your general plan designation, and then what size ADU you can build, the maximum size based on where you're located. And then also all of your special districts. So these will determine a lot of your fees. And these are also often the folks that you really need to talk to first as a first step, especially sanitary. Okay, and then let's see. Online, we have a list of online resources that are helpful to folks. These are all live links here. There's a online how-to guide that takes you through basically the stepwise through the process of building an ADU from pre-application through to construction and occupancy. And then there's a little bit more information. There's an overview of ADU regulations. I wish I could make this more concise, but it's already as concise as it'll get on here. We do have some helpful tables that show kind of what your different requirements are based on where you're located and how big your lot is. And there's also some information in a few different places on the website about alternatives to ADUs. Some people don't know that they can have an option of doing a renovation project that's just kind of a guest suite in their home. That's not technically an ADU, it doesn't have a full kitchen, but it costs a lot less to build and there's a lot fewer fees associated with that. So I like to make sure people know about that. Let's see, yeah, financing is a big one. So there's a section on planning or financing, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And then this one, types of ADUs. So some people may just be thinking of an ADU as like a standalone small home on their property, but you can build ADUs above garages, and there's special allowances for that in state code. You can do a garage conversion, and you don't have to replace your parking in a garage. So that's some information there. I think I've gone through everything. Then estimate your costs. Yeah, so there's a lot of information about costs and fees, because that's, I think, the majority of questions that people have as they start this process. So right now, I'm going to go into the guides. So we have these guides that we worked with a consultant to create, and I think they're really helpful. They're available for purchase, hard copy, at our front desk, and also on the website. So this ADU Basics one, it's just kind of for people that haven't really thought about this before. This is the first time they're exploring this idea. This is another version of the how-to guide that's on the website. This, I think, is going to be very helpful for people. It's an eligibility flow chart. It just helps them to kind of ask themselves a series of questions and then determine whether they can build an ADU, how big they can go. General information about cost, general information about standards, and the frequently asked questions from the website. Another guide that we have is a design guide. And this one's really great because it visualizes everything. So you can actually see, for detached new construction, people can see what their setbacks are, how tall they're allowed to build, what some sample floor plans might be. And then there's all sorts of different types of ADUs that are illustrated here. So there's the regular detached home, a detached garage, which has reduced setback requirements, attached ADU, and then we have examples in and outside the urban services line, which in the county have there's different standards. And then again, we also have conversion ADUs, where we show people how you can convert just a part of your existing home with a small bump out, which is allowed in our code, up to, I believe it's 150 square feet addition you can make, without it being considered a new ADU. And then again, we talk about the remodel alternative.
Is there any mention of using modulars?
Yes, that's in the resources. I can't recall if it's in the guides themselves, but I know there's a section.
So a lot of people
plans. Yeah, a lot of these plans for ADUs are all prefab options. Okay, and then the biggest guide that we have is this financing guide, and it's 62 pages. I'm not going to flip all the way through it. It doesn't have as many pretty pictures as the other ones. But I think I pulled some pages out of the presentation. So the financing guide talks again about the types of ADUs and the typical cost to build each one of those. Because the cost can range from being a conversion ADU, which can be as small as like $30,000, to a new detached ADU, which might cost like $350,000. And talks about the fees, county fees, connection and permit fees, how you finance your project, ADUs as rentals, and then case studies. This is just pulling out a page from that guide. It shows all of the different types of fees and example ADU sizes and what those fees would be. And then we have prototypes that show kind of, one is a new detached structure, one's an accessory conversion, one's a garage unit, and one is a remodel alternative. We go through all the fees, including special fees for those, and get to a range of $26,000 to $333,000. So it's really a huge range. And there's, a lot of people may not be aware, especially for a detached structure, how much that costs right now.
On that note, how do you account for the rising costs of construction and materials in guides like this? Because those numbers are going to change?
Yeah, so the guides are kind of living documents, and we, staff, will update them periodically. We'll have to make a decision on how often to do that. But yes, yeah, and they are marked with their date on front of the guides.
Yeah, it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah,
so.
right, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then coming soon, so this doesn't exist on the website yet, but there's a place where there will be this ADU fee cost estimator. So people can go in and enter information about their project and actually get a cash flow over time to figure out whether their project will make financial sense.
So how soon do you think that would be?
It is coming very soon. Yeah. So I've been working with the building department on it. The tricky part is we're pulling in all of the county fees, and it's actually quite complicated. All the county fees are calculated. Like if you look over here, this is a list of all the fees, and then there's a lot of calculation behind these numbers. So I've been working with building staff to get that kind of retrofitted for ADUs specifically, since there's different fee structure for ADUs. But we're very close. I would say within the next month for sure. You can see that up on the website. So the way it'll work is folks will first enter information about their project onto the building department ADU permit fee estimator. And then they'll use this spreadsheet, which they'll copy in their fee cost from building. This, I did an example, which is a conversion, so it's the fees only amount to about $8,000. So they enter that in there, and then enter other information about their costs. So their hard costs, their any design costs, Title 24 analysis, special district fees. Oops. And then they'll arrive at this spreadsheet where they'll enter in their expected household size, their down payment, any loan that they expect to pay, the loan term, the interest rate, et cetera, what they expect to make on rental income if they're planning to rent it out. And then they'll see this cash flow. So that in my example, they get a cash flow of nearly $400 a month, even during the initial period where they're paying off their loan. And then also at the bottom, it says that the rent level that they're charging, what it's affordable, who it's affordable for. So this is 60% of AMI for this example. So I'm very excited about this tool. I've never seen anything quite like this at another jurisdiction before, so it's really great.
Can you remind us of some of the benefits of a deed restricted affordable ADU?
Yes.
Benefits to the person building it, I mean, obviously to the person.
Yeah, maybe Carlos, that would be a good segue into Carlos.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Both of we have 2 loan programs that are available to folks that are building ADUs, and they both require them to deed restrict. So I should pass on
I didn't want to cut your presentation
Yeah,
for
no,
sure,
no.
if that's what you were at a good stopping point. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Perfect.
Okay.
And you actually have a program summary. It's a double-sided sheet with the same information. And so for homeowners that want to do this and they need some extra help with financing the project, or people that are very interested in creating affordable housing, and they're willing to rent either the main unit or the ADU to a potential person, then the county can offer them for up to $40,000 to help them build or construct the ADU. And so you have the loan terms on the bottom of the page, but in essence, the homeowner would agree to rent one of the units for 20 years. And if they do that, and then after 20 years, the loan is forgivable. It's free money. And so it's a 20-year loan where they can get up to $40,000 from the county. If they want to pay it off, if they want to get out of that restriction in less than 20 years, then they would pay whatever amount they got, plus 3% in interest, simple interest. So it's very, very straightforward. You have all of the info there, and our section will administer those loans. So if you know any folks, anyone that would be interested in doing that, then we guide them through the process as Stacy has explained. And once they figure that out and they want to go through the process, then they can come to us and we'll put that money into escrow. We will certify the buyers. We will monitor, excuse me, the renters. I'm used to working with buyers and renters. This is probably my first program dealing with renters. Commissioner Chambers. And so we will certify the renters, monitor them annually, make sure that they're paying what they're supposed to be paying. And if the homeowner does that for 20 years, then our restrictions go away. So it's very positive.
I have a point I would like to bring up. Real estate brokers are messengers to property owners. Point of interest, the Watsonville Association of Realtors, which is Rini Pajaro Valley Association of Realtors, has now merged with Santa Cruz County Board. So we're all one single board now. I would like a presentation to our board, if I can have the business cards, because they really need to know and have a program like this presented to them. And let them be the messengers back to the property owners who always need counsel or guidance or information to give them a sense of comfort that they're not walking into a bureaucracy mess. It doesn't have to be like that if they follow these guidelines. But we need a presentation. If I can have your business cards, please.
You bet we would love to do that. We do that every now and then.
We were just talking about that yesterday.
And actually Micaela from our section was actually at the Board of Realtors, one of their affordable housing classes just a couple of weeks ago.
Good.
And so they touched on all of our programs very briefly, but we would love to bring this in detail to the Board of Realtors, and I'm glad that you joined now efforts, because now we just have to make one presentation.
Well, this creates a huge impact on our housing problem. So, but we have to get the word out to the property owner. And that will come from us, I can assure you, a very large portion of it.
And also, if there's any other community groups that would like a presentation, I mean, we can take the show on the road.
Sure. It's important.
Yeah, maybe the community foundation or some other group that might want to host a meeting or a school.
We are meeting, we're working with the Bay Federal, and periodically we meet with all of their loan officers to bring out new programs like this. But if you know of any other groups, we would love to do that. Same way, if you have any specific groups in your specific districts and you would like us to come and make a brief presentation or just give you material or how to access it, we would love to do that.
Yeah, along the same lines, I did provide, along with a copy of my presentation, hard copy, these little green cards. So we can definitely give more of those to you as well. They have just a website link to the AD website, so to help spread the word. And we also have a poster up front, which I just showed on the presentation here.
Yeah. And so for our realtors and people that work with landlords, one of the benefits in the back of your page, one of the benefits for our homeowners is that they have a couple of options on how to pick their renters and the types of how much money they can charge a renter. So they can go with our basic formula where we certify the renter, and you have those numbers there. Or they can also work with Housing Authority, and then let's say that they have a Section 8 voucher holder that has been income certified by Housing Authority, saves us time, and the landlord or the homeowner can charge just a little more. They can make a little more money.
I have a question about the loan term. So the $40,000, forgive me if you told us this earlier, but how is that figure determined to be the maximum amount. Was that?
I don't know, Kathy left. But it was somewhere
It's
between.
based on the amount of money available overall, I'm guessing. Does anybody remember?
I seem to remember Supervisor Cooner put forward the program, and there was a budget amount, and I think the 40,000 divided into that and appropriate in some manner, if I remember right.
And the source of funding is?
Is now the impact fees?
Okay.
The housing impact fees.
Okay.
So initially it was going to be money left over from RDA, but because of the 20-year restriction, we couldn't do that. And so that moved over to the housing impact fees. Yeah.
Habitat, is there a habitat option too?
There is also for our senior citizens, there is a My Home, My House, My Home program. And that one is being, it's county money, but it's been, that goes to help to Habitat for Humanity, that they will administer that program. They will work with our senior citizens homeowners so that they can build an ADU and rent it to a low-income person, and they will work with them so they can build it, they hold their hands, they do all of that work, but they will administer that
That's a
program.
higher amount, right? I think
that-
80,000. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a higher amount, and they're combining a couple of things, and they are also working, and I think it's been finalized now, the financing has been worked out with Bay Federal, so that they can also help them go through all of their financing process, yeah.
I think they're doing the same program in the city of Santa Cruz, Habitat.
Correct.
Yeah, they're already doing that.
Yeah. So for our program, lastly, is that, and I'm glad you mentioned the city of Santa Cruz, is our program, it's a great program, but it only works in the unincorporated areas of the county. Met with a wonderful guy from Watsonville, but he's in the city limits there. Can't help him.
Thank you.
I may have missed this, I'm sorry, it's late. If somebody doesn't rent it during those 20 years, is there a period of time where this triggers anything, like if it's not rented out during a period of time?
Then the loan would become due and payable.
Due and payable after, is there a period of time where the vacancy would be
I'm sure
triggered?
there's some sort of grace period. There's probably like a 30-day window or something, and then maybe some notice and conference with the county staff. I haven't seen what the loan documents are yet, but I'm sure it'll address that issue.
And then if they sell it, is it transferable at all?
Yes, they can do that. They can transfer it to the new owner, or they can choose to pay it off. And
So they pay the whole amount off, no prorations, and but the buyer would get a continuance of the existing 20 year.
Correct.
Whether 16 or 10 or 5, whatever's left.
Correct.
Or they could pay the note off and that deed restriction would then be removed?
Yes.
I see, all right.
Any other commission questions before I?
Well, the question may have too much to do with my circumstances at the moment.
Do you want to ask that offline, or do you want to ask it?
I'll ask off.
Okay. All right.
It may be of interest to the realtors. If the lot is large enough, can you build a second unit, a second?
Third.
Two dwellings?
Third, yeah. Can you have a third unit? You can't. So you can't have two ADUs.
That would make it a triplex, basically.
Okay.
What about the tiny houses?
We don't allow an additional unit beyond one ADU per property. Although there is new legislation, draft legislation that would allow that. So stay tuned.
Didn't that one die in committee then?
That one did, but
it might come back.
Yeah.
Briefly, any member of the public want to comment or ask a question on that item? Becky?
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. I'm just thinking about this last question and a recent article in the Santa Cruz Sentinel about cooperative housing and how I could see multiple ADUs around, say, a group facility where there would be a kitchen, living room. So that's just something to think about. Thank you for the presentation. That was very good, and welcome to the staff. Thank you. I have just a comment about the special district fees. In the Mid-County, Soquel Creek Water District fees are very high for ADUs, and I have more than once heard at not only the district's board meetings, but also at Board of Supervisor meetings, members of the public who are very shocked by the price tag for getting water service for an ADU. Even though it says in your thing to go talk directly to them, I think there's a disconnect between that agency's requirements and what the county offers here. So I would really, on behalf of those shocked people, like to ask that there be something, a price tag. It's $55,000 an acre foot, and it's substantial. And they also have to do, toilet offsets and things like that. So it's a very expensive and involved process. One man at the recent Board of Supervisor meeting said his water service alone for the ADU was $35,000, and that was a shock to him. So I'd like something.
It might be.
Yes. So I also, because I work in a plant nursery, more and more I'm hearing people come in that say, my neighbor built an ADU on their garage, and now these people are looking in my backyard. And they're looking for fast-growing plants for privacy. I would like to ask that in these code changes, that when there is an ADU put on a garage or on top of a house, that the wall that faces the neighbor have no windows. And there is precedent for that in the Aptos Village project to protect the privacy of the Bayview Hotel. There were no windows allowed on the new structure on the side of the structure facing the Bayview Hotel. And I think we need to respect people's privacies out in our neighborhoods while we're providing housing. Then lastly, I just want to say that at one of these ADU discussions before the board, there was a fellow named Mr. Sokolow that spoke in favor of ADUs, and he had a plethora of templates that he wanted to offer free of charge to people for building sketches and plans, and I would like to see something like that made available to the general public too. Thank you very much again for your good presentation.
Thank you. Okay, we have just a few minutes left for the meeting, so unless there are any other burning questions, we'll move on to the last item, which is just a general overview of housing activities. There's information about this in our packet, but was someone going to make a sort of oral presentation about that?
We have nothing to report.
Does anyone from the commission have questions about that? Or anything that they read? No? Okay. With that, there is no written correspondence, so I guess we move to adjourn.
I so moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Great.
My last move.
I have a date with the dentist in a few moments.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you all for coming. It's great to meet all of you. And also, if anyone wants to get page 2 of Mr. Keeley's report, I have it here. And could you make copies for the group?
You bet. Before you all leave, that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay. All right, everybody.